Welcome, everybody, to CFL Weekly Pick'em Show on the Gruely True Sports Network. The CFL Weekly Pick'em Show was brought to you by BetNow.eu for a 100% cash back bonus on your first deposit up to $500. Make sure you go to BetNow.eu and use the promo code TRUTH100. All right, I am your co-host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my other two co-hosts. First up, Brian Schmidt. How you doing, Schmitty?
I'm doing good. Always a pleasure to be here on the show with a legend, and you too, Mike.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me and then Robert, but all right, whatever. Next up, a man that is a legend, and of course I'm not introducing Brian, four-time Grey Cup winner, Robert Drummond. How you doing, Robert?
Doing pretty good, except for the simple fact that it's raining like crazy here, so
it is here,
it's better than the other stuff that you can tell.
This weather sucks.
You know,
It is here 3.
I always
I'm in Ohio now,
I always
so
wanted to
it's
get
here.
cold out until it happens. You're in Ohio now, Schmitty?
I'm in Ohio right now.
Oh.
I could have made the 2.5-hour trip down south, and we could have done this show, in a studio somewhere. But instead, here we are.
Well, I could have sat on your lap. It'd have been like old times. All right, you ready to go? Let's go. We'll start off with, here we go, Robert. McLeod, Bethel Thompson threw a pair of touchdowns. S.G. Green racked up 170 receiving yards to lead the Toronto Argonauts past the Ottawa Red Blacks with a 28-21 win on Friday night. The Argos snapped a 3-game losing streak and improved the record to 3-12 with their victory under new general manager Michael Pinball Clemens. I think it's a big win just because of how poorly and inept and unmotivated they looked from the week before, Robert.
Yeah, great win by Toronto. It's just to see Pinball, get in there and give motivation to those guys, and just, be the type of person he is. It's just you got to know Pinner, to understand, the motivation that he can bring to the team. I pretty much at that point, I counted Toronto out, and I said that, they didn't want to play with heart, want to play with desire, want to play with things of that nature. But when Penner comes in there, it's an entirely different story. He's just a great guy. I was fortunate enough to be his teammate for 2 years, and I just understand, just the, vitality that he not only brings, to a city, but just to an organization and just to everyone around him. He brightens everything he brings around him, and I think that things are looking bright for them going forward. I hope they can end the season strong, and prepare for next year.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me, Schmitty, was we haven't seen this in the stat line too much this year. James Wilder, 15 carries, 82 yards.
Yeah, they fed the ball to Wilder, which I thought was important. And can we finally get to the point where we can stop calling Toronto the worst team in the CFL? I think Ottawa has that now.
Yeah, they've been, I think, last in my power rankings for like a month, so I don't know who you're talking to, but...
Well, your power rankings are usually a heck of a lot better than some of the other things you see. So.
Than the Nissan power rankings?
I saw one where they actually had Toronto going into the game. They were the worst team in the CFL, and I don't believe that.
No, and we definitely don't believe that after this last game. But in the defense of whoever wrote that, they did lose 55-8 last week. Two teams that definitely are not towards the bottom. They're more towards the top. Bo Levi Mitchell threw for 298 yards and 2 touchdown passes to help the Calgary Stampeders over the Saskatchewan Roughriders with a 30-28 home win on Friday night. This is a huge win, not just because of where they sit in the standings with Saskatchewan, but I think it's a huge win just coming off the loss to the Montreal. Brian?
Absolutely. You didn't say a name there, so. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, this is also like Calgary is Calgary. Huge win at home. When you have to have a win, they always seem to get it in regular season. But now can they do this in the playoffs is going to be the key, because that's not been something they've been strong at here recently.
Well, last year they won the Grey Cup. They were strong last year.
Yeah, last year, but they could have had 3 or 4 Grey Cups here in the last, what?
Oh, yeah, they could have a string of 3 or 4 in a row, but that's hard to do unless you're Robert Drummond. Robert's won a few before. I think you've strung a couple together there, didn't you?
I've been to 4 in a row.
Yeah. He doesn't mean to brag, though, but that's why we call him our resident legend. Let's see.
Which is exactly it.
But
which is crazy within itself, but
Yeah, and Robert, I think this game just shows us that these are definitely two of what I think are the top 4 teams in the CFL right now.
Two very, very balanced teams. We had said last week that I didn't think Bo Levi Mitchell would have two back-to-back games where he didn't lose, but his team lost. He's a very competitive player, very, very good player. But Saskatchewan is a team that on any given day can beat anybody in this league. So Cody Fajardo didn't have a great game. And he threw an interception. But they're a dangerous team. And these teams will run into each other again. Right now, Calgary got the one-up on them in this game, but don't ever count Saskatchewan out.
All right, and we've got a pick six and a big rushing performance from Andrew Harris led the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to a 35-24 win, a home win, over the Montreal Alouettes on Saturday. And this was a huge win, Robert, because this is a team that it was on a 3-game losing streak. The defense stepped up, picked off 4 passes in the game. This was I don't even think a big win even states enough how big this is.
It's a very, very big win. The fact that Winnipeg can go out there and establish a ground game, with Harris is huge. The 166 yards. I mean, wow. Those sound like my numbers when I was playing. Great job for that young man. But you can control the clock, you can control the tempo of the game, you can control the pace of the game by being able to run the ball. And that's they just basically just set a precedent for what other teams were going to expect, against the Blue Bombers, going into the postseason.
Yeah, and when we look at this, Brian, I think Andrew Harris was definitely the difference in this game, especially when you look at the quarterback play for both teams. Vernon Adams, 4 interceptions. Chris Strevler, 2 interceptions. So the difference here was being able to run the ball.
Yeah, it certainly was a difference. And also, surprisingly, Vernon Adams didn't run as much as he's done in some of the past games. So he had a poor passing performance, but then he also really didn't run the ball. He only ran the ball a couple times. So definitely Andrew Harris was the key in this game, and everybody's going to have bad games, but certainly this once again proves what we've been saying for weeks. Vernon Adams has to play with Montreal to win, and obviously he did do that.
Yep, and next up, the Edmonton Eskimos clinched a playoff berth with a 19-6 win over the visiting BC Lions. And I think here the key to this game was the Lions had to face major adversity when they lost Mike Riley, who left the game with suspected broken left wrist midway through the first quarter. And I think once that wrist snapped, there went the BC Lions playoff chances, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, without the once you get an injury like that, it changes everything, and certainly it did here. That's a rough injury to have to deal with, and really, O'Brien came in and he didn't play horribly, but obviously he's not Mike Riley, and that was, to me, that's the key in the game.
Yeah, and I think, has there been a team that has had their quarterback every game this year?
I don't think so.
I mean, if there has, there ain't too many of them. What about Cody Fajardo?
No, I think early on. I think he missed a couple games early on.
Yeah, I'm almost positive he missed a couple games too. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I'm sure he did too.
And when you look at this game, once again, these stat lines all look familiar. The team that won had Shaq Cooper, 18 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. Once again, and I think the reason this is so important, and we see so many guys 80, 90, 166 yards in all these games, we've seen such an attrition of quarterbacks that with a backup quarterback in, having a running game is paramount to winning, even more than it is when it's not. Robert?
Oh, having a running game is huge. You control the tempo of the game, you can control the clock, you can control the pace of the game. I go back to when I played, before I moved to Toronto, in my Baltimore days, we had Mike Pringle, myself in the backfield, so we could control the clock and control the tempo. Then when I got to Toronto, we had myself and Pinball Clemens. again, we can control the clock, we can control the tempo. So any team that can run the ball effectively and have guys, get 80, 90, over 100 yards, have 15 to 20 to 25 carries, they're definitely dominating the game up front, which is where the game is won. In the trenches, those big guys up front, who we call the hogs, the offensive line, the defensive line, they're basically going to dictate and tell you who wins the game.
Yeah, and like I said, I think especially when you're rolling with a backup quarterback, it's paramount to be able to get the running game going. Next up, we've got the picks for Week 19. I think we're all picking it like a 97% clip this year. We're going to start off with Robert, since we got one of Robert's old teams in this first game. We got the Toronto Argonauts Friday night. We'll travel to Montreal to take on the Alouettes. Any shot here for your Argonauts? Argonauts.
You know what? I'm going to take Toronto in this game for the simple fact of Mike Clemens, and just the energy, and the adversity they've gone through all year in Toronto, and just the life that he shoots back in their arm. I just think he goes out and has allow those guys to be able to go out there and play with themselves and just have a great game.
All right, Brian?
I'm going to take Montreal. They've got a chance to get back on the winning track, and they need to, because next week they play Hamilton. So this is the game they really got to win.
All right. I want to go with Robert, just because I respect Robert. But I'm going with Brian. I'm going to go with Montreal. Brian didn't laugh.
No, I laughed, but...
You laughed to yourself?
I did.
Okay. So I'm going to go with Montreal too, but I think this is going to be a close game. Next up, Saskatchewan at BC, Brian.
Oh, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, especially with no Mike Riley.
Yeah, with no Mike Riley, this is almost too easy.
Yeah, with Mike Riley, it's probably 38-24. Without Mike Riley, it's 38-4. What do you think, Robert?
Are you kidding me? No Mike Riley? Saskatchewan easily.
I had to ask,
2 or 3 touchdown wins.
Hey, wait till the next game. That's the game where we can just all say Hamilton at the same time. I'm going to go with Saskatchewan also. All right, Ottawa to Hamilton. I'm taking Hamilton. Everybody else taking Hamilton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That won't be a contest.
No, that'll be as much as a contest as Hamilton wants it to be. Next up, this is the game of the week because it's really the only game with 2 really playoff teams in it. Winnipeg will travel to Calgary to take on the Stampeders. This will be on Saturday night. And the importance here is we're still playing for first place. When you look at the Western Division, Calgary's 10-5, Saskatchewan's 10-5, but now Winnipeg with that win this last week, 10-6. This is a huge game, and for both teams, because we're getting to the end here to win the West. Brian, Winnipeg or Calgary?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Calgary at home. Winnipeg had a great showing last week, but I like Calgary at home and to start. And this is one thing too. I thought about this earlier. There's been very few years in the last 4 or 5 years we've done this show where Calgary's really had a lot to play for at this time of season. A lot of times we've been talking about them, not getting into where they're not playing guys and things like that. Well, Calgary right now has got to play. So I'm going to take Calgary and definitely see that they may continue to put things together at the playoff time to where now they actually have to play people instead of sitting people and resting people and doing things like that.
All right, Robert, you agree?
I agree. I'm going to go with Calgary at home. It's this huge game, and they can make a statement about it because they have to play each other next week also. So this could be a huge motivational factor for them psychologically, winning this game and then having to play on Winnipeg again next week.
Yeah,
so I'm going to go with Calgary.
Yeah, if you win this one, you're a game and a half up, and you're in a lot better shape going into Winnipeg. I'm going to go with Calgary just because I don't think Winnipeg's got the quarterback play to be able to go to Calgary and win the game. So I'm going with the Stampeders also. Guys, any final thoughts? Schmidt? Brian?
No, I don't really have anything. Just ready for the playoffs to get here.
All right, Robert.
Somehow you blanked out on me.
Robert?
No thoughts really. My Syracuse play Orangemen play the Pitt Panthers tomorrow, and good luck to them. They're not having a great year.
Yeah, and also you're the one that told us Maryland was a top 10 team after 3 weeks.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Oh goodness.
But I just realized that tonight because I was doing an Indiana football show, and I started looking at this, and yeah. But I do believe Maryland is headed in the right direction, though.
They are.
But hard to build a college program in a year or two, so.
It is.
They're definitely heading the right direction.
As long as Ohio State loses, everything will be fine with the world.
That's not going to happen.
Who do they play this week?
Northwestern on Friday.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But Penn State could give them a game. Wisconsin could give them a game. Actually, I think Penn State's a bigger danger to them than Wisconsin.
Penn State is a way bigger danger than Wisconsin.
But
I think.
All right, guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap the show up because we obviously, once we start talking about Northwestern Ohio State, we've run out of CFL stuff. So we will be back next week with Week 20 as we're getting to the nitty-gritty, almost playoff time. So remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Robert Drummond, Brian Schmidt, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak. Man.